All right, topside view here. We can see, as we pointed out before, the contactor right here. Now this one is a single pole contactor. Yours could actually be a double pole, which might look a little different. Now our unit is on right now, so I'm not going to touch any of this. I just want to show you what this part looks like. Yours probably does not have this cover right here. And if it doesn't have that cover, that's probably part of the reason why you might have ants. This actually protects your contactor from bugs, dust, debris, things like that. So it's good to leave that on there and just remove it if you're needing to test it and look for ant patties. You'll know with an exposed button, you'll see the ants right away. And I'll show you what that looks like here in a second. Covers don't always fully protect you from ants because ants, they will climb up in there, but they do help quite a bit. You could do a quick test, make sure that your power is off. When you do this, we're going to check continuity between only the brake. If you have a solid, what we call a shunt leg there, they're also called pole-and-a-half contactors, you don't need to check here because that already constantly has 120 going through there. This is where your brake happens right here, and your contacts are. So we need to know if there is little to no resistance on the brake, the button, and see if it is making good connection and has good continuity. We're going to go inside and I'm going to show you how to test that and what a ant-filled contactor looks like. And we'll actually get into the science behind why ants do this. So let's head inside, guys. Walking back into the store. Gonna look at contactors. Like we were talking about earlier, yours could look a little different. You could have a partially covered contactor like this one. You could have a fully covered like this one. Or you could have an all the way uncovered like this, which is what most people have. Now this is a double pole. It's got two switches here, two brakes. And this is a single, and it'll either look like this. It's got kind of a fatter section there, or it could have more of a slim guy that goes through here. So if yours is covered, while it does help to have covers on there to help reduce the possibility of ants, doesn't mean you don't have ants. So how do we check that? Well, we're going to open this guy up. Just a normal Phillips screwdriver. Okay, and that'll just come right off. There we have it. That's where your contact points are. Kind of hard to see them. I don't know if we'll be able to get a really good look here, but contact, there it is. Kind of hard to see, but it's that guy right there. And every time this comes on, it arcs and it burns. So eventually those contacts become pitted, and it's time to replace your contactor. Now, the only reason to take that off is if you're getting high resistance across here, you know, maybe an ohm instead of under an ohm, should have the least resistance possible. So it should always be less than an ohm, preferably close to 0.1 or lower. So if you do put your meter across here and see normal reading for contacts, which I usually just put them here, is you press it down and you can see 0.1, very little resistance, and that's what we're aiming for on contactors. So if you press that in and you're getting a higher number over an ohm, remove this cover like we just did. Look under there and see if you see ant patties, and I'll show you what that looks like here in just a second. So as you can see, it is completely and totally covered in ants. And this is probably one of the worst ones I've seen. It is very extreme. So interesting, it actually happened on our neighbor's unit, which is what we were just at back there, and it was absolutely covered. If you need to remove the cover and yours isn't fully covered like that, where you can unscrew it, there's actually tabs on these type, which are partial covered. So you can see right here, we can get our screwdriver or our flat head under here, and that just comes right off. So different ways to remove that, but it'll come off and you can take a look. Putting it on, however, may present itself as more difficult. So that's how we get into that. And as I said, you'll always have continuity here because it is a literal solid piece of metal. So you don't need to check continuity on this if you've got the pole and a half, also called single pole, because, well, as you can see, it's all connected. All right, so we'll put this back together here and we'll get into the science behind why ants do this. All right, welcome to HVAC Science. And what we're going to get into today is why are ants attracted to contactors? What makes these interesting in a way that ants will literally come to their death by going into those contacts? Well, this is an electromagnet, and electromagnetic fields attract little critters like ants. Now, why is that? Well, magnetic fields indicate to ants that this could provide heat. It could provide a safe nesting ground. They can sense these things. A lot of insects can, which is why wasps will build nests in AC units. It's safe, there's heat, it's hidden. So they come in here and they're like, where is the source coming from? Well, it's coming from this guy right here. And inside this is a stationary magnetic core. Our contacts here, boop, boop, these guys right here are connected to the armature that only pulls in when this magnetic core is energized. So when we get our control voltage, our low side voltage from the thermostat completes the circuit through the Y. You'll notice, especially if you have gas heating on your control board, you'll have two yellow wires. Well, I say yellow. Hello. I'm doing what I told you guys not to do. Don't go by wire colors, but on the Y terminal in your control boards, there's one that then goes to your outside unit. Your thermostat gets the call for cooling, engages the other side of the 24 volt, and it gets magnetized and it pulls in. Without that low side control voltage, this will not pull in to complete the circuit of 240 volts. Once that happens, once we call, this then becomes energized and it pulls together. That completes it. So instead of a floating armature like this, it makes contact. The current arcs between the armature and the contact points. So on our contact points, when they make connection, as it goes through, so we can kind of see here what's going on. So our power circuit, our contacts that move, it arcs with electricity. So literally every single time your unit comes on, the electricity just, let's use a more fun color. Ooh, lighter green. So it's like, oh, that's the worst thing ever. Whatever. You know what I'm talking about. It's lightning. Only it's just an arc of electricity that goes through. So as this happens, remember we were talking about the pitting. It's going to eventually burn off that nickel-plated contact and you have to replace it. But getting back to the present ants. So as they sense this magnetic field, now all around here, you know, you've got the coil. It's like boop a doop a doop, kind of goes around like this. And this is just, you know, traditional science. I'm not going to draw anything beautiful here by any stretch of the imagination. But around this is just a field. It's like a field of energy. And the ants can sense this. They're like, what is that? Okay, let's go investigate. Safe space, right? Safe space. In the little guys come. They get underneath these contacts here because they can sense that this is now energized. And in those little guys go and ant patties because they get zapped and now they're little charred bodies. So as you could see from the contacts I showed you earlier, that was literally thousands of ants crammed into this thing. Just how many of them continue to go in, and you're thinking, are ants that stupid? The short of it is, they're not dumb. It just confuses them because they're sending this signal, and when one or two or however many kind of come in here to investigate, here's the key to why all of a sudden hundreds, thousands of them, they'll get stuck all in there. And now this is if our unit outside isn't coming on. So here's how it works. As these ants start coming in and they get all ant pattied, what happens is the ant emits a pheromone. You know, this little guy with his little antennae, cute little face. Yeah, he's so happy. And he's got all these little legs. Don't judge me. I'm not an artist. Okay, we'll fill in his little body. Why not? So he goes, help! He's in his death throes. Okay, and then this pheromone just kind of comes out and starts emitting, and that alerts other ants. Especially fire ants, like, rrr. So they're like, what the bro? So then they run in to rescue them. And so cycle continues. They keep coming to the rescue. They keep building up more and more of these ant patties, more and more of these delicious fried insects. Until eventually this gets so clogged that the 240 volts, well, it can't get through anymore. Since it can't get through anymore, well, guess what? No cool air for you. That's, just kind of explains where their little heads are at, and it's nothing personal against you. It's no vendetta of any sort. Maybe. I don't pretend to know what these little guys think. That gives you an idea of why these ants are so attracted to specifically contactors. You know what? I just feel like coloring. So, magnetic field. It almost looks like a brain, you guys. That's crazy. It just gives you a sense of what's going on. Now, ants love contactors, and here in Texas we have geckos, and geckos like to lay on capacitors in our unit, and bzz, southern fried gecko with a side of char. Now that we know what causes them to come into the contactor and just squish themselves into it, now we know that, but how can we prevent it? There's a way to prevent this, right? Of course there is. These simple steps. So number 1 on the list is bug repellent. Now, Crystal, you may be saying, I don't like putting these sorts of things out into the air on my unit. What if, it causes environmental issues? I got you. For those of you that just want a quick and easy solution, get a can of bug spray from your local Home Depot, Lowe's, Ace, whatever you've got near you, and get yourself just a can of insect repellent. Almost all insect repellents are good for up to 600 volts. On the contactor side, from our AC current that we have here, it shouldn't get over 245, 246, something like that. So you're good up to 600 volts, which is what everything in your outdoor unit is rated for. Your motor wires, your compressor wires, they're all rated for upwards of 600 volts. Now, would things survive out there if you had that sort of power surge? No, it'd probably at least take out your capacitor, because your capacitor is good for up to 440. All of them now are 440 that I've seen. I think they still make some 370, but it's better to go with 440. Number 1, getting sidetracked here, bug repellent. Spray right on this contactor, not a problem. Just spray it all on the contacts. Remember, a cover doesn't always mean it's going to protect it. So if you decide to go ahead and get a new contactor, take off the cover and spray all of this really good. Put it back on, spray all of that really good, just to make sure. You can even take this further. Around your unit, you can sprinkle boric acid. What that does is, as the ants crawl through that, they're going to take that over to their queen. Their queen's going to eat that. They're all gonna die. Any day now. Any day now. So, as I was saying before we were rudely interrupted by someone's car alarm, which, by the way, those don't work, this is going to cause the ants to get the poison, take it back to the mound, kills a bunch of them off that might be near the unit that's causing problems. Number 3, this one's a lot more environment friendly, and it works. You can plant spearmint or peppermint. So if you plant that near your unit, around it, they don't like it. Not sure if it's something to do with the smell, but more than likely it's just something that irritates them. They don't like it. Not saying that's foolproof. I would still, do some of these other things to help. This is definitely something that helps with a lot of insects, plants and whatnot you can plant around your home will keep them away. Kind of like, I think it's termites and, what was it? It was like marigolds, zinnias, things like that. They don't like them. So it's good to plant that or have, cedar, mulch, things like that to keep them away. This natural battle plan can help as well. Using a sealed contactor, it's going to help a lot. It won't necessarily 100% keep them out, but it is a sort of defense against them. So using a sealed contactor, okay? And something else, oddly enough, I had just learned about this today, is chalk. So you could use, make it look somewhat like a real letter there. You could use chalk. Like that spray chalk that they use when they're marking lines, pipelines, things like that. You can use chalk around the unit, and that also helps. If you have pets or kiddos, you might not want to use something like this, because what are kids gonna do? Ooh, colorful, what is this? Play in it. Dogs, well, dogs are going to do whatever the heck they want to do, neighborhood cats, whatnot. It's not practical if you, say, have animals or children that you suspect are going to go through it. But trying these things are going to keep them out of your unit. It's just like any bug repellent. You're going to have to reapply it after a certain amount of time. That can be one of the things that causes your outdoor unit not to come on. So that's one thing to check when you're going out to your unit and say it's not coming on once you pull the power. We've talked about this over and over and over again. Please make sure that you cut the power to your unit before pulling this bad boy out of there to do diagnosis. I don't need anyone's death on my conscience, so please cut the power. Once you do that, if yours is sealed, you can open it up. You can look for those lovely ant patties or charred ant bodies. Most people's are already open. So usually, boom, right away you can see I have ants. Personally, if the unit's got that many ants caked up in there, just don't be cheap. Go get yourself a new contactor. You never know what's happened, if you've scraped off enough. If you're really tight on a budget, and you're like, hey, I can't afford the $15 to $30 that these cost, remove everything out of there with a screwdriver. Try to scrape those contacts as best as you can so they can make a clean connection again. You can use wire brushes, but be very careful with those, because you don't want to scrape off too much of the contact material, the nickel that's in there, because it needs that to make good connection. For all the silliness we've had today, I just really wanted to sit with you guys, kind of elaborate, talk about the science behind why they would be doing this and what you can do to prevent them as best as possible from getting into your unit. I've done all of this before. It keeps them out. I haven't had an instance where they didn't come back, unless, of course, we had to put more insecticide, something like that nearby. It's good practice. Again, if there's more natural ways, do that. If you're not wanting to use an aerosol can, there's things you can plant near your unit. There's insecticide you can spray around your unit as well. You can use a sealed contactor. All of these things add up to preventing these little guys from literally taking down your air conditioning. And it's quite hilarious to discover an entirely ant-infested, charred body contactor. You're thinking, really, ants? Ants do this? And the answer is yes, they do. Keep all these things in mind. I hope you enjoyed this episode. I hope we were able to break it down. Hopefully you don't get too annoyed by my rambling. It's how I do. Anyway, this has been HVAC science section of it, and hopefully you guys learned something today and know what to look for when you're testing a contactor that potentially might have ants. Alrighty, well, take care, guys, and have a great rest of your week. We'll see you again soon. Bye-bye.